If you're thinking about hiring a driver guide, or you're just curious about what it includes and what it might cost, today's podcast should answer all of your questions. Hey, thanks so much for joining me again here on the Traveling in Ireland podcast. So, we're just after St. Patrick's Day, and interest in Ireland is at its peak for 2023 travel. I am so happy to say that I'm busy and that there's a lot of interest in Ireland, and I'm helping people left and right and center with their Ireland vacations, and it's so much fun. It's really just what I love to do. So I'm so happy you're here. I'm happy that you want to know more about traveling in Ireland, and I am thrilled to share my knowledge with you. So thank you so much for tuning in. One of the things that I have noticed following the pandemic is that interest in Ireland driver guides has increased. And I know there are a lot of questions about it. What is it? What do I get? What does it mean? What does it cost? What is a driver guide? So today I want to take the time to kind of lay out for you what an Ireland driver guide is. What can you expect when you work with an Ireland driver guide? How to go about finding one, and kind of all the things that go into it. A little bit about some of the driver guides that I personally recommend, and how you can very easily get an estimate for your own Ireland vacation. So, are you ready? We are going to dive right in today. So, if you want to visit Ireland at your own pace, but you really don't want to drive, your next best option is to hire a driver guide. Now, this is a private driver that is going to only work with you during your vacation. So you won't have to worry about sharing the trip with somebody else, or having the driver leave you somewhere and go off and take care of somebody else. The driver is with you for the extent of the time that you hire them. They are yours. Now, that does come with a few rules and stipulations and caveats. So we're going to jump through those a little bit and explain kind of what you can expect when you hire a driver guide. Now, the first thing you're going to find is that there are a lot of options when you're searching for a private guide in Ireland. If you do a web search, a lot of the time what's going to return to you is tour companies. And that may not be what you're looking for. While some of those companies may also offer private guides, a lot of the time those are tour companies, and you will be in a vehicle with other people that are not on your tour, and you may not have a whole lot of direction or impact onto where those tours go. So you're going to find everything from luxury chauffeur companies with inclusive services. So that would mean they can book your accommodations, they can book your dining, they can book your activities and entry fees, things like that. And then on the far end of the spectrum, you'll find private chauffeurs who offer day trips, or even one-way trips. That's becoming more and more popular as people are looking to get the most out of their vacation, but maybe they can't afford a driver for a full day. So you have this whole spectrum of drivers, kind of from one aspect to the other, right? So let's talk first about what you can expect a private driver in Ireland to cost, because that is really kind of the first step in deciding whether or not this is for you. Now, the cost of a private driver in Ireland does have a few variables to it. It's going to depend on the number of people in the group and how much luggage they plan to bring. It is going to depend on the size of the touring vehicle. Obviously, a larger vehicle is going to cost more. It's going to depend on if you are wanting a single day tour where the driver will pick you up in the morning and return you to the same place that evening, or if you want a multi-day tour where the driver is traveling with you, because obviously the driver will then need accommodations in the evening that will have to be folded into the cost. And then finally, is this a round trip tour? Are they taking you from Dublin and back to Dublin before you leave? Or is it going to be a one-way tour where maybe they start in Dublin and end at Shannon Airport? So all of those things do come into consideration when you are hiring a private driver. Now, the average daily cost for a private driver guide is around €725 a day. Now, some drivers charge more and some drivers charge less. So as I said, that is just an average. Now, what goes into that cost is the vehicle, obviously the driver's time, and you get 8 hours, and that is from start to finish. The clock doesn't stop. Let's say you visit the Cliffs of Moher and you're there for 2 hours. That clock didn't stop while you were there. That is still considered the driver is working. They are still on the clock. So your 8 hours starts when they pick you up and ends when they drop you off. That cost also includes tolls, fuel, meals for the driver while they're out. So you're not paying for their meals while you're out and about. And if they are spending the night somewhere because you're continuing on the next day, that's often folded into that price as well. So there's a lot that goes into that day tour price. Now, if you're wanting a larger vehicle than for 4 passengers or a smaller one, the price is going to obviously vary based on vehicle size, group size, and things like that. So what you're looking at to hire a private driver for 1 week in Ireland for 4 people, on average, is going to cost you just under €6,000. Again, dependent on the driver you hire, the vehicle they drive, and a lot of other things. But that's about your average. Now, if that is in your wheelhouse, terrific. But I'm going to give you a few ways that you might consider to save money when you're considering hiring a driver guide. Number one, remember that you are not going to need a driver in Dublin City. So if you are planning 1 or 2 days in Dublin, you can get rid of that cost. Another thing to consider is where your tour is starting and ending. And maybe you're discussing it with your driver. Maybe your driver's located in the West, and it might be easy for them to pick you up in Galway. Well, then you could take the train over there and cut a day off of that driver guide. Take the train over, enjoy Galway City for a day, and start your tour the next day with that driver. And then the third option is to consider one-way drivers. Now, this is something that is relatively a newer idea. Mostly you think of this with taxi drivers, but there are chauffeur drivers that will take you from point to point. Now, this has a little bit of a caveat in it as well, because the driver does have to return to their starting point. And so while they aren't going to have the overnight cost of spending the night and then taking you the next day, they will have the return to the starting point basically empty. So they're not picking up another fare to take back to, let's say, they took you from Dublin to Cork. So they won't be picking up another fare to take back to Dublin. So you do have to keep in mind that you are basically paying for that return as well. So just one thing to keep in mind. But on average, those point-to-point trips will cost a little bit less. So it's just another way to keep in mind if you're looking to save money, but you do want to have a driver guide. I have quite a few people that I'm working with this year that are opting to do mostly the public transportation, but they're putting in a driver guide for maybe the longer routes that there's something to see in between them. I have people who are doing driver guides from Galway to Cork. There's a lot to see in that beautiful ancient East area in between those cities. So they're splurging on a driver guide for one day during their trip. Or you may find that you can take the train to, let's say, Killarney, but instead of opting to take a group tour of the Dingle Peninsula or the Ring of Kerry, you could opt for a private guide that one day and really make the most of that really beautiful area with all the things that it offers. So, how do you find the best private drivers in Ireland? Now, as I said at the beginning, you're going to find a lot of options when you hit the search button in Google. So, the easiest way is to just visit my website. I have private drivers that I work with and recommend. And if you visit the show notes, then you will just hop down the page and there is a list of the private drivers that I have already vetted. They are exceptional driver guides and they range in services from all-inclusive to point-to-point drivers. So that's probably the easiest way to find a driver guide. But if you want to do your own searching, you want to make sure of a few things. So after you find a driver guide that you want to maybe learn more about or make an inquiry with, you want to ask for their license. They need to be fully licensed to carry passengers and fully insured. You should never, ever be charged for their insurance. So if you hire somebody and they say, okay, here's our cost, plus you have to pay for my insurance, that is a big red flag and pull out. Get away, get away. They also should provide their own vehicle. You should never, ever have to rent the vehicle and then pay the driver separately. This is another big red flag. It most likely means that they are not insured. They are not licensed to drive passengers. So just a couple of things to look for there. You can and should request proof of licensing. Now, the TFI Driver Check app, so it's the Travel Federation of Ireland, I believe is what that TFI stands for. But the TFI Driver Check app is free to download, and you can check the licenses of taxis, limousines, and chauffeurs. So if you find a private driver that you would like to work with and you want to ask for their details, you can check them out on that app to make sure that they are legit. But like I said, if you want to avoid the hassle of searching through dozens and dozens of online results, go ahead, visit the show notes, and about halfway down the page that you land on, you are going to see a list of the Ireland driver guide companies that I recommend. All of the companies that I include in my list have been personally vetted by me. They are all reliable, they are all insured, and they are all just the best in the business. I have everything from a boutique full service option to point drivers, so you should be able to find an Ireland driver guide to suit your vacation goals, your needs, and your budget. All the companies that I recommend have easy to click links so you can contact them with your request, or you can request an estimate directly from me. There's links on there. You actually can't miss it. It's big. It says request an estimate. And you just fill out a form, send it on to me, and I will find a driver guide to suit your needs. So there you have it. That is really all you need to know about hiring a driver guide in Ireland. But as always, if you have any questions, you can email me directly, Jody, Jody, at IrelandFamilyVacations.com. As always, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, slán go fóill.